I can't feel my legs. Don't worry, I'll take care of your wife and maybe your kids. Hi, I'm John and this is the Post Haste. Today we're talking about the 2026 Honda Prelude. I wanted to talk about it because this week at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, they had an example in a nice racing blue color. And since I can't make it out to West Sussex, I just wanted to speculate about what we know so far. So I don't quite know where this fits into Honda's lineup, and I think it's kind of a weird car for them to be making right now, but I'm also super excited that they are making it. I think the reason why it's smart for them is it's their only coupe. So far, Current Driver is speculating that the starting price for the Sport is going to be around $31,000, and they think the Sport Touring is going to be around $38,000. So it's a pretty big delta between the two prices, and I think for $31,000, assuming it is that, it should be a bit of a steal for what I think you're going to get. However, at $38,000, it starts to edge closer to the Type R, and it might not be quite as good a deal. But I think the Type R and this are very different cars, so that might not matter, and probably very different buyers. So what we know so far is we know it's going to be the 2-liter, 2-motor hybrid powertrain that you find in the Civic, the Accord, the CR-V. Chances are this is going to have more power than any of those. And I think that's interesting right there, just that this engine I think is capable of more. So hopefully they can get the output up to, at least 220 something. I think a lot of people are hoping it'll be closer to 250, but I'll be shocked if it comes out anywhere near there. The torque, however, should be really good. It's already, I think, 232 in the Civic, and I have a feeling the torque on this is going to be, probably up above 250. At least that's what I'm hoping for. And so even if it doesn't have quite as much horsepower as some other models, I think it'll be very quick off the line, and this car from 0 to 30 with the hybrid is probably going to be surprisingly quick. So the other thing that people are speculating this week is that they're saying, from looking at it and talking to Honda reps, they think it's going to have the Type R suspension and brakes. I don't think it'll be exactly the same, in part because I think this is going to be more of a cruiser than, say, the Type R, and I think it would be weird for Honda to put that stiff a suspension on this car. In fact, most people are, that have the Type R, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people that have the Type R have actually been swapping out the module in the Acura Type S, the Integra Type S, to soften the ride up a little bit just because it's so harsh day to day. So I think this is going to be a little softer than that, but we'll see. The brakes would be great. It might not be needed because it's not going to have near as much horsepower, but it would still be nice to have that kind of stopping power. I really hope it gets a similar front differential to the Type R. The SI also has a front differential, but it's not quite the same as the Type R, not quite as robust. But the most interesting part about this car to me by far is what they're calling an S Plus shift. And it's interesting because it doesn't make sense to me and I don't really get what it is. So I'll be interested to see what they come up with. Right now, the paddles on the Civic Hybrid that I have are really just for extra regenerative braking. And it sounds like on this car, it actually is going to mimic shifts. I don't know what that means in this car because it is a direct drive transmission similar to the Civic. At least that's what they're saying so far. So really, it sounds like it's just going to be mimicking shifts. It's not actually going to be shifting. So we'll see what that actually ends up meaning in the grand scheme of things. I think it might create more driver involvement, but it's also sort of fake. But at an age with piped-in engine sound and 8 million other things that aren't quite real anymore, it might be just fine. So we'll see. I just think it's going to be one of the more interesting aspects of this car because you haven't seen it in any other Honda product. As far as who the competition is for this car, I think the biggest competition is actually from another Honda. It's the Civic Si. I think that car is going to be more involved with its manual. It's going to have 4 doors, which is nice. Its performance isn't going to be the same. I think this is going to be faster and get better fuel economy. So it's going to be a trade-off, but I think it's going to come down to whether you want more driver involvement or whether you want a car that's a little faster and just is more economical. I also think this is going to compete against the GR86 and the BRZ. The thing about those is they're both rear-wheel drive and most people buy them in manual. So I could see people cross-shopping these, but in the end it's going to come down to, do you want a true sports car or do you want something that's sort of sports car light but a great everyday car? Because I think this is going to be quieter and more comfortable. I think both of them make a lot of sense in terms of they can be your only car, and that's where I think this will not compete against the MX-5 because that's more of a secondary car. whereas this could very easily be your only car and you'd be fine, especially with the sort of lift back, hatchback sort of rear end of the Prelude. I also think it's going to be competing against the Civic Hybrid. I think the Civic Hybrid is not nearly as sporty, but it's still going to be quick. It's also going to have, 4 doors or 5 doors if you get the hatch, and it's going to hold a lot more stuff. I think the dimensions, I don't fully know what they're going to be with the Prelude. It sounds like they might be close to what the Mark V Prelude was. I saw one publication saying it might be 169 inches, but that sounds way too short to me, considering I think it was in the high 170s for the Mark V. A million years ago, I almost ended up buying a Mark V Prelude and ended up buying a Integra GSR from the late 90s instead. And honestly, the reason I bought the Integra was because it was a little cheaper and I liked the looks better overall. However, 10 years down the road, I thought the Prelude aged really well. Its design stayed very modern, and I do wish that they had injected a little more of that Mark V Prelude looks into the current one, or even the Mark IV, which I also thought was a good-looking car. However, I don't know that that fits into Honda's current design language. In conclusion, this is not a car that I would shop for, because if I were buying a sports car, I'd want it to be manual and rear-wheel drive. And if I was buying more of an everyday car, I'd want it to be something with 4 doors and something a little less sporty than this is probably going to be. However, I hope they sell a ton of these, because I want Honda to keep making this type of vehicle. And if they do keep making this type of vehicle, Honda, if you're listening, feel free to make the S2000. We've all been speculating about it every day since you stopped making it, so go ahead and make that, like tomorrow, please. Thanks for watching. This has been the Post Haste. Feel free to like or subscribe, or leave a comment telling me what a grade A moron I am. I'm so glad you're okay. Yeah, I thought for sure I was a goner. What did you say about my wife? Nothing. I said I'd get her for you.